Well, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to Ibro Up to Date at 1. It is the 19th of June 2019. I trust you're having a lovely afternoon so far. Now, major stories that we have for you this afternoon is where a Nairobi court is today set to deliver a judgment on 4 suspects charged with the 2015 terror attack at the Garissa University, where 148 people, mainly students, were killed. The Milimani Law Court will declare its verdict on Mohammed Abikar, Hassan, Sahal Hussein and Rashid Charles, who are facing charges arising from the Prevention of Terrorism Act of 2012. Our reporter Jeff Khaimba is preparing that story and will be joining him at the Milimani Law Courts in just a short while. But to other news, President Uhuru Kenyatta has signed into law the Supplementary Appropriation Bill to release funds for the government expenditure for the financial year ending 30th of June. The law mandates the National Treasury to release 161 billion from the Consolidated Fund to various government departments. The funds are categorized into recurrent expenditure, which totals to 107.5 billion, and development expenditure that totals to 53.7 billion respectively. The Appropriation Act authorizes, among other things, the release of 8 billion for settlement of pending government bills. The allocation of pending bills is aimed at effecting the payments to traders who have provided services to the government in line with the recent directive by President Uhuru Kenyatta. The law the president signed also reflects the continuation of the austerity measures that were entrenched at the beginning of the financial year that is closing. The austerity measures are reflected in the reduction of government expenditure by 58 billion, which was slashed from various departments. The State Department of Infrastructure was allocated 16.6 billion, while the Ministry of Water and Sanitation will receive 11.8 billion for development. The State Department for Crop Development will receive 8.9 billion, while the State Department for Sport Development was allocated 9.1 billion. The State Department of University Education will receive 5.3 billion, while the State Department of Vocational and Technical Training will receive 2.6 billion. The Teachers Service Commission was allocated 14.1 billion, while the State Department of Housing was allocated 7.8 billion and 4.1 billion will go to the State Department of Health. The bill was presented to the President for signing by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, who was accompanied by the Leader of Majority in the National Assembly, Aden Duale, and Clerk Michael Sialai. Now let's head over to the corridors of justice, where Kiambu High Court Judge Christine Meoli has disqualified herself from hearing a case where city lawyer Asa Nyekundi is accused of killing his son. Justice Meoli, while referring the case to Milimani Law Court, cited conflict of interest since the accused was a classmate.
Nyekundi had earlier been charged with manslaughter, but the Director of Public Prosecution applied for the charge to be dropped and substituted with murder charges. The city lawyer, however, challenged the DPP's decision to prefer murder charges against him. Following Justice Christine Meoli's decision to distance herself from the case due to conflict of interest, the case has now been placed before Justice Ngenye Macharia for mention and further directions. Lawyer Nyekundi was arrested for allegedly killing his son. However, according to Nyekundi, he was trying to holster his firearm while in the car when he accidentally fired, shooting his son in the chest. Meanwhile, a Mombasa court is expected to give a ruling in a case where 3 men, among them an adopted son, are accused of defrauding the family of the late tycoon TSS about 400 million Kenya shillings. The two, together with their accomplice, Mr. James Mwangi, of facing several other criminal cases in Mombasa and Malindi involving defrauding the TSS business empire millions of shillings. Being directors and shareholders of KAB Investments Limited, the accused made falsified minutes of a board meeting to obtain loans on January 15, 2014. Milia Kisenya for Ebro TV.
Now let's stay at the corridors of justice, where a Nairobi court today is set to deliver a judgment on 4 suspects charged with the 2015 terror attack at the Garissa University, where 148 people, mainly students, were killed. The Milimani Law Court will declare its verdict after Mohammed Abikar, Hassan, Sahal Hussein and Rashid Charles Mbereso, who are facing charges arising from Prevention of Terrorism Act of 2012. Now I do understand we have our reporter Jeff Khayamba. Jeff, what else can you tell us about this story?
Good afternoon to you. Yes, indeed, this was a case that was supposed to be a rule at around 10 a.m. But then until now, we are still waiting, just peeping from the doors of the Chief Magistrate, that is Francis Andai, who is actually expected to deliver this kind of a grant or a landmark kind of a ruling over the 4 key suspects of the Garissa University attack that actually occurred on the 2nd of April in the year 2015. So remember, this is a case that has been postponed twice. The case was supposed to be ruled around 2 months ago, but then it was actually pushed ahead to yesterday. But then the case was actually supposed to be ruled also yesterday, but also the case was actually pushed until today. So we do not know exactly what are the weighty matters behind this case. Remember, the case was actually involving 5 key suspects, but then in the last ruling that was actually made by the same judge, that is Francis Andai, actually acquitted one person, that is a watchman from the university, that is Osman Dagale, with claims that there was no sufficient evidence to actually warrant the prosecution of Dagane. So we are just waiting what exactly might be happening today. We remember, this is a case that actually maybe, if at all it goes either way, the 4 key suspects may actually face a life imprisonment. So let's wait, maybe in the next 30 minutes or any time from now, that Francis and I will be giving his landmark judgment to the 4 key suspects of the Garissa University. Back to you in studio.
Could you tell us why the court is truly extending this case in a period of time where we have seen being delayed for more than 3 times now?
Anyway, I can't really tell what exactly might be leading to the postponement of this case. However, all the matters lies to the Chief Magistrate, that is Francis Andai. Last time he did actually allude that he did not have sufficient evidence to write the ruling. So this is a case that actually requires 9 months for him to actually prosecute this case, and already the 9 months have actually elapsed. So it is a kind of a game in this kind of a crucial case. Yesterday we did have an interview with some of the family members, affected family members, and they said that what exactly they need is actually justice to be delivered. Already one of the family members have already filed a case in court seeking for their compensation, with claims that the government has actually neglected them. So one of the family members was actually asking, yes, if the court actually rules in favor of them, maybe leading to the 4 key suspects actually facing the life imprisonment, what next? For him, he was actually seeking for the compensation. He says that the life of their beloved ones cannot actually be replaced. So at least they need something tangible. Even despite the ruling, at least they should be given something tangible that they can feel that indeed, yes, we did lose our beloved ones, but at the end of the day, we did actually receive this. So let's wait. It is one of the key suspects that are actually said to be Al-Shabaab, to be the members of the Al-Shabaab terror group. But then we did also see one of the suspects, that is Mr. Mbereso, who comes from Tanzania, who is also part of the group that will be waiting for his fate at the end of the day. So we don't know whether exactly Francis Andai will be once again postponing the case, or will be giving the ruling by today. Remember, if at all he rules in favor of the family members, the victims or the suspects will be having another chance to also appeal before the Court of Appeal, or they can go before they go to the Supreme Court of Kenya. So let's wait. It's a D-Day for the key four suspects. It might be a dark day for them, or it might be a reprieve for them. But all that lies before the hands of the Chief Magistrate, that is Francis Andai.
Well, thank you, Jeff Khaimba. That is our reporter, Jeff Khaimba, just coming to us live from the Milimani Law Courts, just briefing us about this tumultuous case. And of course, he will stay at the courtrooms to bring us up to speed in our subsequent bulletins. Now, still in the confines of the corridors of justice, renowned blogger Robert Alai has been arraigned in court, charged with disclosure of information related to terrorist activities. Alai was arraigned before senior resident magistrate Shinkai Tobiko at Milimani Law Courts a day after he was arrested for posting a picture of slain police officers in Wajir. Alai was detained Tuesday morning by the anti-terror police unit in connection with sharing pictures of the Wajir terror attack, where 8 police officers died after their vehicle ran over an explosive device. Alai was arraigned alongside prison warden Patrick Safari, who is also accused of sharing pictures on social media platform. Police want Alai detained for 30 days to enable the officers complete their investigations. Well, elsewhere, there is need to sensitize primary school pupils about drugs and substance abuse and their potential harm. This follows a report launched today by the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, NACADA, that shows about 20.2% pupils have abused drugs.
A report launched by the authority shows that about 20.2 pupils have abused drugs. The survey launched today by NACADA was conducted in 27 counties and involved 3,307 pupils from 177 primary schools. The counties include Mombasa, Kilifi, Lamu, Kisii, Nyamira, Kisumu, Migori, Bungoma, Kakamega, Uasin Gishu, Elgeyo Marakwet, Baringo, Bomet, Nakuru and Narok. Others are Murang'a, Nyandarua, Kirinyaga, Meru, Isiolo, Machakos, Makueni, Kitui, Garissa and Nairobi. Apart from showing that 20.2% of primary school pupils have abused drugs, the findings also indicate that 80% of primary school pupils are aware of drugs commonly abused, the huge chunk being exposed to the vice as early as when they were 4 years old by their parents, guardians, celebrities and role models, including teachers. The main sources of the drugs being shops, kiosks and bar near schools at 29 and 26 respectively. The most abused drugs are prescription drugs at 10.4%, followed by alcohol, tobacco and cannabis at 7.2%, 6% and 1% respectively. NACADA is now proposing a raft of measures including the banning of selling of a single-stick cigarette and also, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, develop life skills programs that promote abstinence and delaying drug and substance abuse. Busara Naman for Ebru TV.
The U.S. Embassy in Nairobi has made a U-turn over the new currency notes in their visa application process. This is after holding a meeting with the Central Bank of Kenya. The embassy had said on Tuesday that it will not accept the new currency until new procedures had been finalized. The embassy said they decided on the move after coordination with the CBK, which provided them with the equipment to upgrade and the training necessary to accept the new currencies. Customers can now pay for their visa using the new and old currency, which are valid until October 1st. Uganda and Tanzania have stopped using Kenyan currency in an effort to shield its banks from being used to launder stolen money back into Kenya. This follows the CBK's announcement that it intends to withdraw the old 1,000 shilling note from circulation to combat illicit financial flows and counterfeits effective on October 1st. Elsewhere, the chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the National Gender and Equity Commission, and the Commission on Administrative Justice will be excluded from the membership of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission after President Uhuru Kenyatta ascended to the National Cohesion and Integration Amendment Bill. The new law seeks to align the Act with the Constitution by providing procedure for appointing commissioners. Under the new law, the commissioners are to be appointed by the President and approved by the National Assembly, contrary to the earlier format where the National Assembly nominates the commissioners and the President appoints them. This position was challenged in the High Court, and the judgment passed declaring certain sections of the National Cohesion and Integration Act of 2008 dealing with the procedure of appointing commissioners as unconstitutional.
Mswada uliotiwa saini wa marekebisho ya sheria ya tume ya mshikamano na ushirikisho wa kitaifa unakusudiwa kuianisha sheria hiyo na katiba na kutoa utaratibu wa kuteua makamishna wa tume hiyo. Na chini ya sheria hiyo mpya, makamishna wa tume hiyo watateuliwa na rais, halafu wataidhinishwa na bunge. Sheria hiyo mpya pia haitawajumuisha, ambao hawataweza kujumuishwa kwenye tume hiyo ni wakuu wa tume ya haki za binadamu, tume ya kitaifa ya jinsia na usawa na tume ya utoaji wa haki.
Now let's head over to Nakuru, where the county government of Nakuru and dairy stakeholders have initiated a program aimed at unlocking the untapped 23 billion shillings potential in the dairy sub-sector in the region. Agriculture Executive Committee member Dr. Immaculate Njuthe-Maina says the last year dairy farmers in the county earned 9.6 billion shillings from the sale of 291 million litres of milk, which is reported to be way far below the county can yield.
Dr. Njuthe says low productivity, poor quality and limited market access were major factors that are compelling dairy farmers to sell over 60% of milk at low prices at informal outlets.
Tutafanya kwa 20 wards ambazo kwa sasa zote tumeshaziandaa, wakulima wanajijua, wameandika proposals, 65 of the proposals zimepita, na hivi karibuni tutaita mkutano wa kuwapatia pesa ya kuanzishia kazi ambayo waliandika kwa proposal zao.
The CEC says incomes from 310,000 dairy farmers within the county could rise threefold if value addition, chains and marketing of milk products are streamlined. Currently, smallholder dairy farmers yield an average of 5 litres per animal per day, which the program aims to increase to 15 litres per animal through encouraging farmers to embrace modern technology in affordable production and preservation of animal feeds.
Last year, Mr. Chairman of the Agriculture Committee, I'd like you to note that we were able to sell the recorded amounts of milk, 290 million litres of milk, 107,525 litres.
The initiative also targets to ensure that only qualified agricultural extension officers are allowed to administer artificial insemination services. Nakuru is one of the 21 counties that are beneficiaries of the project, funded in the tune of 22.6 billion shillings by the World Bank under auspices of National Agricultural and Rural Inclusive Growth Project. Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization pasture specialist Dr. Naftali Ondambu says the county will unlock the untapped potential in the dairy subsector if farmers are enabled to get drought-resistant, high-nutrient content and affordable fodder.
Wakulima tungehimiza hata sisi ambao tunataka kuwakilisha nyinyi, tungetaka serikali yetu kuu iweze kuongeza import taxes kabisa, ziwekwe juu hata kama zitakuwa 100%.
He says that the county needs to facilitate training in the manufacture of animal feeds and that demonstration farms be established in strategic locations to equip dairy farmers with skills on growing, harvesting and storage of fodder to be used during dry seasons. Nakuru County Assembly Vice Chairman to Agriculture and Livestock Committee Wilson Mwangi says the dairy subsector is plagued by cheap imports from neighboring countries and an all-time high cost of animal feeds. Gwangare Maina notes that farmers are losing millions of shillings to bogus artificial insemination service providers who do not supply quality semen to have their animals conceive.
Wengine wanakuja wanatuwekea ishiki, tunawekewa baya. Ukimwambia arudie ng'ombe yako ikusika yai anakulipisha tena. Sasa tunakuwa na hasara, inaweza rudia mara mbili.
She urged the county government to extend grants and subsidies to dairy farmers in the spirit of developing the subsector that has the potential to generate multiple job openings to youth and women in rural areas.
Now let's head over to Parliament, where the National Assembly on Environment Committee has said that CIC Insurance Group Limited failed in compensating Thage oil spill victims in Kibwezi East constituency. The House team observed that the Kenya Pipeline Company KPC and the insurer CIC had taken unnecessarily long in the verification process of the claimants following the oil spill that happened in 2015.
Referring to revelations made by acting Kenya Pipeline Company Managing Director Hudson Andambi on Tuesday, June 11th, when he appeared before the Parliamentary Committee, Kosgei told off the CIC Insurance over their claims that some victims demanding compensation were not residents of Thange. Andambi had informed the committee 1,182 claims that were relating to medical injuries had not been paid by the insurer since they needed strict proof that was not provided. However, the committee noted that the insurer was finding escape route not to pay Thange victims. At present, KPC says to have paid 31 million shillings to 266 claims. Prior, they had received 4,267 claims, where 491 claims were rejected on grounds of being fraudulent and 1,272 claims scrapped off the list on allegations that they were Thange residents. The area MP Jessica Mbalu, who also accompanied other MPs, said she was dissatisfied with the level of the implementation of what they had agreed with KPC after the oil leak 5 years ago. She accused KPC and the insurer of using divide and rule mechanism so that they do not compensate all the victims. She said CIC was holding confidential meetings in private places while obtaining details on treatment and other expenses from claimants to enable assessment, something that locked out a big number of victims.
Is there a plan also to compensate?
Already, Makueni Governor Kivutha Kibwana has threatened to sue government as well as the Kenya Pipeline Company at the International Court of Justice ICJ in Hague, Netherlands, over 2 oil spillages in the country.
Well, currently the committee is sitting, and our reporter Alan Ochanda will bring us more in our subsequent bulletins. Elsewhere, Uganda hosts Africa's largest refugee population, 1.25 million, mostly South Sudanese. Health workers warn that the refugees infected with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, are not being properly tracked for treatment. They say the problem include ignorance, stigma, and refugee mobility. Halima Adhumani reports from Uganda's Adumani district.
45-year-old South Sudanese refugee Rose Amoni knows how damaging HIV can be. She's lived with it for 20 years. Her husband infected her and then died of AIDS, leaving her to care for herself and an HIV-positive daughter.
I have other children. Because of the difficulty of the cost of school, most of them got married when they were still young. There was nobody to pay for their school fees.
Poverty is the biggest challenge for HIV-positive refugees in Uganda, like Amoni, who acknowledge their status and get treatment. But Ugandan health workers in Adumani district say fewer than 1,000 refugees are on record as being HIV-positive, while at least double that number are believed to be infected. They blame ignorance for many refusing to be tested or dismissing test results.
They have beliefs that HIV and AIDS is a disease of Ugandans, and it may not affect them as South Sudanese.
In 2015, health workers in Adumani district recorded fewer than 200 cases of HIV, but that number has more than tripled after the influx of some 200,000 South Sudanese refugees fleeing years of war and conflict. Refugee flows to and from Uganda make checking the spread of HIV a challenge.
When you start somebody on treatment, they first go to Sudan, the other side. So they come back after some time when they are very ill. So it becomes very difficult in terms of control. Also, again, that has contributed to resistance.
2/3 of HIV-positive refugees are women whose families rely on them for a dowry payment from a prospective husband when they marry.
So once you diagnose a female as having HIV, it's like you are depriving them of having wealth from this affected woman. We have had scenarios where it became very difficult for the counselors to declare results to some of these communities, especially the females.
Ugandan health workers say the challenge is in educating the uninformed and those in denial on the need for treatment to prevent HIV from spreading to more vulnerable refugees. Halima Athmani for VOA News, Adjumani, Uganda.
Now let's dive into the world of sport. From East Africa now to North Africa, where Harambee Stars has touched base in Cairo, Egypt, ahead of the upcoming African Cup of Nations, which Kenya will be taking part in for the first time in 15 years. This comes after the team's 19-day